is the redistribution of carbon on the surface of the planet. Climate feedbacks are largely driven in atmosphere-biosphere exchange through trace gases, through CO2, through methane. And that carbon that's not in the atmosphere, that's buried in the permafrost and in the sediments and in the lakes and the coastal oceans of the far north, are of real interest to us because climate is especially, or the Arctic is especially sensitive to these climate changes and this climate warming. So we're interested in how that carbon is going to be redistributed in the system as the climate warms in the Arctic, because those feedbacks, the implications of those feedbacks, are potentially really very serious for either, for accelerating these climate processes. And that's why a lot of that interest is focused on those regions. And we don't have very much understanding about how those systems actually function. So we want to get in there and try to do that in a quantitative way. Well, lakes, especially in the Arctic, cover a significant portion of the land surface. They are dynamic features of that surface. They're often shallow, and again, they're associated again with this distribution of carbon and that remineralization or that remobilization of that carbon from the land surface to the atmosphere again. And so that's why we try to focus on those a little bit more. In the temperate zone, our lakes tend to be deeper and more constrained watersheds, and then when you start moving into the Arctic, they tend to be broad, shallow systems and associated with the carbon and permafrost dynamics of that surface. And ultimately, it's how that water is distributed on the surface is going to determine a lot about whether or not that carbon that comes into the atmosphere comes in as CO2 or if it comes in as methane. And methane has a much greater warming potential than CO2 does, on the order of 23, 26 times that at a 100-year time scale. So that, again, is those concerns for me as a biogeochemist, is how that works in anaerobic and aerobic systems that determine that kind of the gas product that makes it back to the atmosphere.